where Alaska journalism is. And I want to welcome you. I am Paula Bancaro. I'm an associate professor and chair of the Department of Journalism and Public Communications at UAA. And we have with us a very distinguished panel of journalists and Mike Dugan. And Mike Dugan is our Atwood Chair of Journalism for 2013. Mike, as you probably all know, was a longtime reporter, editor, and then Metro columnist for the Anchorage Daily News. And then he did something we all probably fantasize about. He left and for a while did PR for Democrats. I don't know if we fantasize about that, but then he ran for the legislature and won and represented Spenard very well for several years. Was it 6 years? So we've selected him as our Atwood Chair of Journalism, and that means that he is among our very experienced professional faculty at UAA. He is the senior faculty member who has deep and really impressive experience in journalism and brings that to the classroom. And what he also does is he does outreach, and so this event is part of that outreach. And so I'm going to pass it on to him. He's going to lead this great group and have them introduce themselves. This event is free. We're in a fundraising effort for the Atwood Chair of Journalism to get it fully endowed. The Atwood Foundation has been very generous to UAA over the years, and they've asked that the community just give a little bit so that the community has a stake in the Atwood Chair of Journalism. And so we're in a fundraising effort for that. There are little flyers back there that you can fill out if you feel like you want to donate. So thanks, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Paula. I have to say that in the pursuit of truth, I have to tell you that senior means old. And that it's not true that I first started in journalism before the invention of the printing press. So anyway, I'm going to start on my right, believe it or not, and ask you to introduce yourself and say whatever else you might want to say that is acceptable in mixed company.
Okay, wait a minute. So the right jab, that was because NPR is on the left side of the dial, and that means that they're a left-leaning organization, and therefore I'm a left-leaning.
Yeah, that's pretty much
And I'm the only one with a glass of wine here, too. No. I'm Elizabeth Arnold, and I teach at UAA, and a couple of my students are here, which is fantastic. And I worked for NPR for many years, and now I have the luxury of when they call me and ask me to do a story, I go, nah, not this time. So I freelance now for them and for Marketplace and a number of other programs, and I'm loving teaching because it makes me deconstruct everything I do, and that's about it.
I'm Steve MacDonald. I'm with Channel 2 News, and I'm currently working my dream job. I'm the special projects manager with Channel 2, as I said, and I have the task of producing 4 one-hour specials a year and helping out whatever else I can do, or my news director makes me do. And by the way, if I'm going to put you on the spot really quick, I'm going to introduce Tracy Szabo. She's our news director at Channel 2. She's just been here a number of months, but I'm glad you're out here, Tracy. And now I have a couple other colleagues who are out there from Channel 2 as well.
So Tracy, you haven't just up sticks and left already?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pearl Grace Rasmussen. I'm a junior at UAA and a broadcast journalism major. I'm a fairly new journalist. I've been working at KTUU Radio since August, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Jill Burke. I'm a staff writer with Alaska Dispatch, and prior to that, I worked with Steve for several years over at KTUU.
My name is Kyle Hopkins. I'm a reporter at the Anchorage Daily News, and before that I worked at the Anchorage Press and the Fairbanks Daily News Miner.
Thank you. I thought I'd start with a question that I guess is sort of at the heart of every journalist at this point, which is, what do you think are the main problems with journalism today? Who wants to start? Well, in that case, Steve.
Somebody's got to start, right? Main problem with journalism or journalists? I guess they're both no. I think we're really stretched thin. I think most newsrooms will probably admit that right now, that there's a lot to do and probably fewer people to do those jobs. There are some real positive challenges out there, though. I think that's probably, I think in a way journalism came to grasp with the fact that it is a business. We like to think it's a calling, but it is a business, and it's got to adhere to the bottom line as much as we don't really want to, right? So we don't. But no, I think we've. I think we're adapting. We're evolving. You've got to evolve or die these days to remain in front of the public and to continue to grow. But I think right now is just, I think people will tell you if journalists is probably doing a lot with some fewer resources this time around, these days. Oops. What did I say?
From my perspective, I think the problem is oversaturation. There's so many entities, there's so many platforms, and speed. So there's such a race to get it out because you're competing against so many entities and so many platforms. The downside of that is with speed comes you risk accuracy, fairness, and context. And I sort of think that with the proliferation of so much and everyone racing to get it out there so fast, we have lost that sort of moment to take a breath and to provide context and accuracy.
I agree with Steve. It may. I agree with you also. But I don't see it more as a problem. I see it more as a challenge, that you need to be versatile. You need to know how to do everything in order to get a good story in limited time. But I think that gives you some chance to grow and to learn how to become a better journalist.
I think that touching off what everybody has said here, one of the side effects of having to do more faster or do more with less staff is the potential for shallowness in your reporting and also lack of quality. And I think that's a problem. It's easy to pump stuff out or to aggregate or curate from somebody else or just rewrite a press release, but I'm not sure that does anybody really any good. To the minimal extent it might be somewhat interesting, how useful is it? And then I actually was chatting about this with some of my colleagues, and one of them brought up a good point that, adaptation is critical. Technology is changing, and it's going to continue to change. And we are, as journalists, are going to be continue to be tasked with how do we adapt our content, our knowledge, our quality control to the devices that people are using and the technology that's out there. And it's easy to take a new gadget or a new device and try to rely on that to kind of carry your momentum and look away from the quality of the product, the quality of the storytelling, the quality of the news gathering, just quality of control overall. And then monetizing the way that journalism is changing, the multiple platforms and the consumptive habits of readers is also a big challenge, and I think will continue to be.
Maybe if I could just drill down a little bit on what Steve said and just talk a little bit about why it's a problem that there's too few people. Because two or three good reporters can do a lot of damage at a small outfit. You can do a lot of good work. But I think the problem is when you've got every outlet is kind of chasing the same kind of low tier stories, and you have all these people who are telling the exact same story with the exact same facts, and they're doing it quickly, and then they're kind of moving on to the next thing. And so you have 5 people at 5 outlets who are just telling you the same story all day long, and they're not kind of going any deeper. And I find when I'm personally at work, that's what I find the most frustrating is when you're writing something that you know that 4 other people in 4 other newsrooms are writing at the same time, and the key is to kind of just get that done, do that, and then try and find the thing that you can make time for later in the day that other people aren't doing, or take that same story that that everyone did to this level, and then just kind of drill down on that story for a while. And another problem with too few people is just and it's I'm not one to talk because I like to be a general assignment reporter. And I tend to, if I have a beat for a while, for a year or two, I kind of want to do something else usually. But it's super valuable to have people who are working a beat and really learn it and understand it. And if you just keep piling beats on top of reporters so that one person is covering 5 different things, you lose the value of really getting to know an issue and understand an issue and kind of finding the real stories.
Thanks. Everybody out here knows what a beat is? Okay, good. So we've talked about the need for speed, understaffing, and I think uniformity. Are there other things that are affecting your jobs? I guess they're all perfect otherwise, huh? Either way.
We touched on technology, which what did we say? If we said the word Twitter, we did a shot? Is that what it was?
Every time you say Twitter or tweets, the audience has to do a shot.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So Twitter. Yeah, right. Yeah, technology has certainly changed the way we report, and I think in a very good way in a lot of respects. In some ways, it's the thing that's piled on journalists that makes their day a little bit crazier and chaotic, more chaotic. But we are reaching wider audiences than ever before. Someone could be filing stories from say Nome that are now going to be seen or heard or read throughout the world, and that I think that's pretty exciting for a journalist at any stage of their career to have that kind of an audience or the potential audience. So I think technology is and the development of technology is certainly presenting an exciting challenge, and it sure has changed the way our jobs are handled. It used to be that we got our assignments in the morning meeting, and then we went off and we covered them. It's not even that good. I can remember what we used to do in the early days of the TV news business is we'd wait for the edition of the Anchorage Daily News, open it up and say, let's do this story, and this story. And then about 11:30 in the morning, the Times came out, and we ran up to the store and bought a copy of that and said, let's do this story, that story. And that's how we did TV news back in the early 80s. It's not a joke, unfortunately. But now, and our newscast was on at, 6 o'clock at night or whatever. Now it's not. It's like as soon as you get there and you get a few facts, that's when the newscast is on. Because we've got people who've got these apps and these phones, and they all want to know the news right away. So we had I just checked with our web guru Jeffrey Rivet before I came down here. We have 655,000 people who've downloaded our app for the month of January. That's a staggering amount of people or hits, I guess, that our website gets, that our app gets for information. So we've got to feed that beast all the time. And it's an exciting challenge, but nonetheless, it is a challenge. Anybody else want to take this thing away?
Well, I would augment what I said about speed and sort of the race to get it on. And are there any editors in the audience? Good. So, so what you have is you're trying to do your story, and you've got editors who are reading everything and every blog and every tweet and everything, and they're constantly calling you saying, why don't you have this? And so you're spending a lot of time saying, well, actually that's wrong, and that's a development, but that's a development in this direction, and the story I'm working on is here, and they got that wrong, or whatever. So you spend so much time sort of putting out fires, again, that you don't have time to take that breath and focus. And at some point, you have to just say stop and write your story. and there's so much going on, and it's happening in a 24-hour cycle, and it's happening, with lightning speed, and you're constantly beating off editors who are telling you, there's more developments. It's sort of just, there's a lot of noise, and it's really hard to turn that noise off and just do what you do best. That's what I mean by accuracy, context, and fairness. That sort of gets lost because everybody's just rushing to get stuff on.
If I could make one quick comment before I hand this out. When I referred back to the early 80s and how we were doing TV news, at that time I kind of felt, because we were so off the beaten path, and Alaska is all by itself, we weren't close to any other markets that you could emulate what was going on. We saw the network news, that kind of thing. We really weren't sure what we were doing and if what we were doing was right. So we were making it up as we went along in a lot of ways, not the facts, but as how we did things. And in a way, I think that dealing with the web and dealing every day with posting things on the internet, in a way I feel like we're making it up as we go along now because it is so new and it's changing so rapidly. We're still trying to figure out exactly what this is.
Let's talk about that for a minute. So how has your job been changed with technology? And what do you see as the things that are likely going to be happening here in the next 5 years or technologically that are going to make a change?
This is something we talk about a lot, and I think about a lot because, when I started in newspapers and my first jobs in college and out of college were in newspapers, we had email accounts and newspapers were putting their stories online, but it was nothing like it is now. It was very much an afterthought, and there was, when I was in school and I got my first kind of job at a daily newspaper, I can remember there was one computer in the middle of the room, and that was the internet computer. And and people were like, every once in a while they'd go sit at the internet computer and they would, ask Jeeves something or whatever, and it just was very much an afterthought. And then, I can't even really remember when it changed. I can remember, I can remember, a few years later, we were posting our stories online. And I can remember going to editors and be like, hey, we should let people comment, like, on the bottom of these stories. People could, like, react to, which turned out to be, like, the worst kind of can of worms ever, clearly. But now, the job is there are days when it's a totally different job than it used to be, where, when I was a crime reporter, you wrote a lot. You were churning in the same way. Reporters have always churned. There's always been low quality work. Like high volume, low quality work is not a new thing, especially for those of us who like worked at kind of smaller places. Like that's just what you did, even when there was no internet. It's just it all piled up and then went in the paper at the end of the day instead of kind of going online throughout the day. When I talk to people about this now, one point I try to make is that the job to me is much more fun than it used to be, and because of those changes. Like I enjoy the job more now because I just have these toys to play with that I didn't back then. It's fun to make. I don't know, like there's the discussion about serving readers and kind of your audience and stuff, and there's also just kind of the day-to-day, what makes you want to go to work. And it's fun to make videos, and it's fun to kind of, if I'm talking to someone and I'm thinking this is a really good interview. How am I going to describe this? How am I going to describe the way they look and the way that they're speaking and stuff? And, maybe I'm not a good enough writer to do that. But if I just shoot a video I could put online, I can just be able to look, this was an amazing conversation. And so, all that stuff is exciting. It has all the drawbacks that we've talked about and are going to kind of keep talking about. But that's a point I like to make, is that just the day-to-day I think is more fun, that we kind of have these tools to play with.
I think I would add, if you're talking technology in the sense of, say, social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, all the different ways that you can not only seek out information, but you can engage readers, you can get information about your story out, you can get more eyeballs to your story, you can have kind of the conversation that makes whatever you're doing relevant or interesting to more people is really important. And I find now you can find a lot of information really quickly to try to add more to whatever you're writing about. More context, more breadth, more depth. You can also find people, like sometimes I can't find somebody in a phone book or find a listing for them, but I can find them on Facebook and I can send them a message and introduce myself, and more often than not, they'll get back to you. They may not want to talk to you, but you've at least made the connection. And I think those are really valuable things. So, excuse me. You know, you also have to be able to wade through that stuff and know which among it you can trust and kind of maintain good boundaries in your news gathering efforts. And I think that you also, that, you know, there's a challenge for the writers and the authors when you're going out on different mediums. You know, your 2,000 word story that's published in your newspaper or on your website is going to be something very different if you're trying to plug it on Twitter. You know, how do you maintain your same kind of voice or interest level with your readers on Twitter that you do on your website, that you do on Facebook? And they're all a little bit different. They require personality. They require kind of constant feeding. We've heard people talk about that before. So.
First of all, Twitter, Twitter, Twitter. That's 3 shots. No, I'm just joking. After just being a young journalist, I've only been the sports reporter at the radio station since August, so I can't really say how technology has developed with me through my experience. But I can say that after doing stories on air on the radio, it's almost second nature for me to post it on our website or Twitter or Facebook. So that just comes naturally. Do I know what's going to happen in 5 years? I don't, but I know it's going to be more about immediacy and how convenient it will be to get that story. And I'm excited to see how that develops.
That's a good point. The folks who are coming into the shops today have grown up with this technology or this basic form of technology. It certainly has evolved, but it is second nature to the folks who are coming into the newsrooms today, where it's for folks like me. I've had to wean myself off the electric typewriter and then yeah. Oh, you didn't have electricity? And then we did, plugged it in and just learn a whole new language. So I think that is something that it's a real advantage for the journalists who are coming up now. Is it will be second nature or is second nature, and they're going to be a lot faster at it than I am.
So are we just talking about technology or other development? Because I mean, I think that what's really changed in terms of journalism in my era is the elephant in the room, which is Fox and MSNBC and sort of opinion-based journalism. And that's there, and I don't see it going away. I really don't. But I do, in my naive, no, I really do believe there will always be an appetite for informative, fair reporting. I don't think that's going to change. I think there's a proliferation of opinion-based journalism, but I don't think the appetite for fair, unbiased, informative journalism will go away. I really don't. And that's really important. And I also think there's a lot of talk about how, well, because revenues are declining for print and all of that, we don't get the investigative stuff. We don't get the really meaty stuff that takes a long time to go out and do. And boy, I really disagree with that, because I think there are so many entities out there now, fund for investigative journalism, fund for environmental reporting, fund for this. I mean, just watch the NewsHour. I mean, most of the best pieces they have on every night are paid for by somebody else. So the NewsHour doesn't have money for it, but other entities do. And I just think that there's actually more outlets than there ever were before for that kind of journalism, which is great.
Thanks. There's a lot of talk about the advantages of what's going on now in our business. The technology's been a good thing all the way around, but one of the things that you have to realize is that trying to find a specific thing on the internet is like trying to get a drink of water from a fire hose, and that not everything that you're going to see there has been vetted or that you can trust. So the question I've got here is, if you agree that that's part of the downside of journalism now, what are the other elements? I'm not talking here about people going out of business or anything like that. I'm just talking about what you report and write different, and in what ways, in what bad ways, I guess you'd say, they different?
I don't know. I don't think I've changed. I don't think it has changed me. I mean, so there's Twitter and there's Facebook and there's all these other. So it's not the yellow pages anymore. So I can't find somebody. I can find them, but that's no substitute ever for me going face to face to this guy and doing a great interview with him and putting him on the air and getting the story. I mean, it's not. It hasn't changed the value of that encounter with that person. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I just don't, I don't see it changing that.
No, I think there's always going to be a market for good journalism, and I think that's what you were saying before too. Is that our viewers, our readers, our listeners are always going to want good, fair, accurate reporting, and as long as we're doing that job, then I think we'll be okay. I think most folks, the vast majority of folks out there can tell the difference between NBC, CBS, ABC, and MSNBC and Fox. I think they can tell the difference, and they know what's opinion, and they know what's considered balanced journalism. And I think as long as good journalists are doing journalism, I think it'll be just fine. Yeah, there's going to be some challenges and some tribulations out there, but I think good journalism is always going to rise to the top, and we'll always figure out a way how to present that to our audience.
As long as Mike's inviting us to complain, I will say one thing that I just this week I hadn't been thinking about at all until just this week, and it didn't occur to me in the context of this talk or whatever, but just in the course of doing work that we talked a little bit about doing lots of work or doing it shallow, and one thing I think about a lot is there's lots of things that you have to report. Right, if there's a car crash in Midtown and a street is blocked, like everyone kind of needs to report that, and you need to get that done quickly, and you just have to do it. And so we're trying to find ways. How do you do that quickly and kind of make time for the other things that you want to do and you can feel good about and stuff. But one thing that occurred to me this week is that I'm glad that I had those few years of working when there was kind of no online competition. It wasn't a consideration, because I think if I was just starting right now, I think there is the potential for people to learn pretty bad habits when it comes to especially if you're looking at you're reporting online, you're seeing what stories get lots of traffic, and you're learning that you could spend 15 minutes on a story and that could be the most read story of the day. Then what is that teaching you as a reporter? That's teaching you to spend 15 minutes on a story, or that at least it's going to take a lot of discipline and kind of and editors who kind of keep their eye on the ball to kind of not fall in not to be tempted by that, right? And so a few years ago maybe you wouldn't put that online right away, and you would drive out there and like try and talk to somebody who was involved in the accident, or kind of just trying to get a scene, a sense of the scene and stuff, and people still do that, and people still do a great job of that kind of reporting, but boy, just the undertow to just kind of to do the other thing, I feel is just strong, and like I said, I just think it's going to breed bad habits.
Yeah, I think that's a tough tension because we all want more readers or viewers, right? I think one of the effects of these changes is that it will force outlets, regardless of whom you are, to kind of do identity checks, both on themselves and on their readers. Who are their consumers? What do they want? How do I get it to them? What makes the story I'm going to tell different than what they might find somewhere else? And what makes it useful to them? And how am I going to reach out to them? And it's going to make, a staff in a newsroom, along with whatever technology team they have with them, to sit down and think about who are we, what are we doing, what are we about, what are we offering, and how do we do that best in this situation, whether it's breaking news of the day or whether it's something that's removed from the day's immediate kind of like stenography events and something that offers more analysis on maybe a big issue affecting a state or a neighborhood.
Going back to what Elizabeth said, she's not going to change. She's going to go out there and cover the story. Like Mike said, with the internet, there's a bunch of things out there, and sometimes you won't be able to figure out what is true. Is this true? They say sometimes it's this or that. No, that's kind of lazy just to pull it out and say, this is the headline. Journalists are not lazy. They're the ones who actually get out there, the ones in the front row trying to dig for the story. So they aren't going to go on the internet and take that. They're actually to dig for the story, and that's what we're going to do.
Thanks. Somebody made a mention of the sort of the phenomena of sort of outlets and jobs and all of that sort of drying up here. And I can remember when I was first at the Daily News, there were 30 reporters maybe on that during in because of the newspaper war that was going on. I think there's 7 or 8 now reporters at the Daily News, which is probably in print anyway, still the best staffed newspaper. So what do you think is going to happen? You know, I mean, where is this convergence of, you know, finances on the one side and technology on the other? Where's that going to take us?
Well, I mean, I think it's already happening, right? But I don't think, again, I'm the optimist here. I think it's already happening, and yes, okay, jobs are drying up here. The old style, okay, we're all going to be in a big room and someone is going to yell copy, and, you know, we're all news reporters for, I'm really dating myself now. Come on, seriously? Right. But at the same time, like I said, in my day, you had to get a job on a newspaper to get to you had to know how to swim before you could get in the pool, or you had to get a job, and you had to get your foot in the door, right? And you had to get a job in a newspaper, right? Nowadays, you can say, okay, I am really interested in fish, and I'm interested in fish politics, and I'm a UAA journalism student, and I'm going to learn everything I possibly can about fish politics, and I'm going to have a blog. And it's going to be so damn good and so damn accurate and informative that people are going to go to this blog. So you have that outlet. You never had that outlet back in the day. You had to get on a newspaper. And so I think there are way more opportunities now to get your foot in the door and start something and say, hey, I'm good at what I'm doing and you can trust me.
Yeah, but can you make any money doing that?
You can.
Don't look at me. I don't know.
Well, but back in the day, you were taking a job at a newspaper and you're saying, you don't have to pay me, I just want the experience.
Actually, I never said that to anybody.
I think I made like $6.50 an hour my first job. I didn't care how much overtime I worked. Just work him, and he doesn't cost us anything. Now I forgot what I was going to say about that.
No money, no jobs
No,
drying up, there's no opportunity.
Oh, I know.
You
You're talking about, what's the future going to hold for the newsrooms and things like that, and staff sizes and things like that. I think our staff has as many positions now as it did 5-6 years ago, and we did see a little dip. And I think that was just because, again, we're trying to figure things out a little bit. We had this new technology. We had to figure out how it was going to work. I think we're still doing that. And I think there was a tendency for, I'm just kind of, just conjecture on my part, I think there was a tendency for some newsrooms maybe to cut back because we didn't know where we were going to go. And maybe if I just hit this button on a phone, it's going to take the place of like 3 different people so I can lay some people off. I think now people who are running the shops are saying, okay, we do need a few more people to make this work the right way. So I think I think we'll get back to a balance. I think we're doing that now, I think.
Let me just add to that question. Clearly, technology is against newspapers because of, in just terms of the actual newspaper, it takes so long to get it out of the newsroom through the computers and on somebody's doorstep. That doesn't seem to be the case, and of course that'll change if more and more of that is done electronically than is now. And the other, the radio and the TV have sort of technological advantages, and apparently the internet does too, if you can consider that to be a separate kind of journalism creature. But what do you see that meaning? How that means to the future of the other three? What's it going to mean to print newspapers? What's it going to mean to radio reporting? What's it going to mean to, television reporting? And I think you're probably the first one who ought to answer that, because you're sort of in between, aren't you?
Sure. I don't know. I'm going to ask you to just kind of clarify that question for me. I got a little lost along the way.
Well, you're not a, sorry, thanks. You're not a traditional newspaper that you're working for. It's not a traditional radio station. It's not a traditional TV station. It's a new breed of cat. And so the question is, if you can sort of take a look at what's happening in others, what do you see as the future of what it is you're doing?
Wow, I'd get a big raise if I could get that one right. I really think adaptation is going to really dominate what we're doing all the time. You're backgrounded by doing quality journalism. You're going to have to adapt to react to the reader's habits and to what you have decided is important as your news gathering operation in terms of mission and values and content. I did read, this kind of should hearten Elizabeth a little bit. I was scouring through the Neiman Journalism Labs, and they have a whole project on, the future for 2013 journalism. And there was one author who said that it is high quality original reporting is going to have a big comeback in 2013 because he had categorized the entities as the incumbents, that would be kind of the legacy media, and the disruptors, which would be the new up-and-coming sites, the emerging kind of new media outlets. A lot of the disruptors, this guy argued, have been able to survive on curating or aggregating the content of the incumbents who have invested in the reporters who are high quality, who can get the good stories, who provide the unique content. But with the shrinkage of revenue and the shrinkage of staff, there's going to be less material to feed off of. And if the disruptors have any desire to survive in the next couple of years, they will have to invest in their own newsrooms and provide their own reporters and provide their own original content. And therefore, you're basically going to have high quality reporting and original content competing for readers and consumers across the platforms, which I love. I was like, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, you tried.
Well, I just want to add to that. So you can never replace the wire guy, right? The wire guy, no matter how many aggregators there are out there, they've got to be aggregating something. And so the wire guy, right? Or you and me, somebody's got to be out there actually getting the story, so that some of these guys who all they do all day is sit in front of their computers and aggregate everything have something to say. So you can't ever get rid of the wire guy. You always need the wire guy. Too bad Dan Joling's not here, because it's like we could give him a big toast. But I just don't see, like, original reporting is never going to go away. You can't. Somebody's got to go out there and do it.
Yeah, as Mark Twain once said, there'll always be newspapers because the people on the south end of hell will want to know what the people at the north end of hell are doing. I'm going to give everybody a chance to say anything that they haven't said quickly, and then I think we're going to open up to questions. So,
Going back to newspapers, yes, TV and radio do have a technological advance, but they do value the writing in newspaper. all a journalist is good writing. You need to have that skill. And like you said earlier, in the newsroom it was 40 people and went down to 8. Well, you need to be versatile too. You need to know how to work a camera, or you need to know how to put a story broadcasting. You need to know how to write, and that is really imperative for journalism.
Everybody else is looking away here. So I guess now's the time you get a shot. Anybody who wants to ask a question, stand up and ask.